Welcome to the Pitchwerks Podcast. I'm Scot MacTaggart. Over the last 20 years, I've been a sales rep, a marketer, a manager, an executive, a consultant, and an advisor. This show is designed to give you access to my list of contacts so that you can learn more about how to present your ideas at work and succeed in your career.
Startups and salespeople, marketers and managers from the Epicast Network in Pittsburgh. It's the Pitchwerks Podcast.
I think so because I believe, and I tell this to my students, I think entrepreneurship is invoked. I think the entrepreneurial spirit, the spirit of it, is not something that belongs to an elite group of people that were born with a golden set of attributes, and they're the only ones that could do it.
This is how I ended up with a show. All right, everybody, it's Wednesday, and that makes this the Pitchwerks Podcast, every week coming to you so you can listen during your commute, find out how to present your ideas at work. Today's guest is Eliada Griffin-El from the Robert Morris University Massey Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. And we're really pleased to have her here today. Before we jump into that, though, you know what I'm going to ask you for. First of all, interact with us. Start with our ratings and reviews. This is how recommendations are made on the networks that you hear us on. So 5 stars, hey, you guys do a great job. 1 star, your mother should have been the one to come to you and tell you this was a bad idea. Either way, it's fine. Don't forget there's social channels out there. It's always Pitchwerks, Pitchwerks. Whether you're talking about Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, we've got all of these things, plus a website that ties it all together. That's pitchwerks.com. Just put the E in works, Pitchwerks. And I'm not joking, seriously. Come on, talk to us, tell us what you want. Do you have an idea for a guest? Let me know who it is. Eliada, how are you today?
I am fine, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This is so much fun.
You've got a great voice.
Thank you.
And I don't mind, seriously, I don't mind
I hope
saying.
I have a nice laugh too, because I am over here about to implode. I'm like, this is so much fun and hilarious. And so forgive me if the giggle
You've never
comes
done
out.
one of these?
No, and I've always had like an alternative dream of being like a radio talk show host because
really?
their voices always sounded so nice over the radio. So This is very fun.
Well, I can't take credit for it, right? That's what we have Buzzy in the control room for. But Buzzy makes us sound really good.
You do a good job, Buzzy.
He really does. No joke. Like I tell people that all the time. I said, I'm very blessed that all I have to do is worry about the content and that the quality of the sound is not my responsibility.
That was fantastic.
I wanted to start with a certain question, but now you got me going in a different direction. So you wanted to have a radio show. Why didn't you start one?
It's so funny. I didn't quite know how.
Right.
I went to graduate school at Pitt, and they have a on-campus radio station.
Yes, they do.
I went through the training and the whole 9. I really did. I was just trying to figure out how to kind of create a show with my own flavor and my own niche. So I'm West African. I was going to, or of West African descent. I was going to play African music and talk about development and emerging markets, and I don't know. And then just never got around to it. I think I got caught up in school, of course, and then I was working on campus in our office of, at that time, or it's called Office of Cross-Cultural and Leadership Development. So life just got busy. But at the time, or that was my driving passion at the time.
Yeah.
I studied international development at Pitt, went through with the PhD studying the same.
Congratulations on that, by the way. What an accomplishment, the PhD, just in general.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. No, I'm grateful to great mentors. Pitt was great,
I'm infinitely jealous. Seriously.
Why?
That level of discipline I never had. I was in for 2 years and decided to start a company with some friends. I mean, I dropped out. I never finished my undergrad, and now looking back, I realize I never had the push through, right? Like I never had.
I didn't. It was discipline that I learned as I went. And it was literally a pastor of mine telling me, you either choose to know the failure of regret or the failure of discipline.
Right.
What did he say? It was something like that.
It's the tricky ones that always elude me,
yeah,
too.
It was so simple, though. But it was like either you will learn what it means to not have disciplined yourself and what the outcome is.
Oh,
Or
okay. So the
you
pain
will
of
learn-
learning it or the pain of not learning it.
Right. So the pain of not being disciplined, or the pain of discipline. Either one is painful. You just choose it. So sorry, y'all. I just totally.
Which one has the payoff?
Which one has the payoff?
Right.
And if you desire to have an outcome at the end that it's going to demand your discipline right now, then you just better, like my mom would say, strong your mind.
Right.
Pull yourself together and be ready to undergo the pain. And that's what it was.
Yeah,
it
well,
was the discipline, like you said, but I'm grateful to have gotten through it too.
Well, but I like the way you presented it. Pain now, pain later, which one's got the payoff
Right.
makes way more sense than just do it. Right?
Or that could be like a subtext, like just do it, but there is pain now or pay later, something. But yeah, definitely that was a big time of growth for me because I love to have fun. And it was summer's sacrifice, people are outside hanging out. I am there tucked away behind closed doors and closed windows trying to study to pass comps. Like, oh man, I was like, this had better be worth it.
Right.
But
What were you hoping to accomplish when you studied this? Like, did you have a goal in mind, a final job that you wanted to do?
I did, which changed dramatically.
Right.
So my initial big picture for myself was to work in government.
Okay.
Right. So GISPIA kind of positions itself as a policy school. My thoughts were, okay, I walk out with this PhD. I could operate in the State's Department trying to facilitate favorable diplomatic relationships between the United States and Africa.
Right.
That was my first thought. And then when Obama entered office and like our whole like community of pro Africa, policy, people were like, yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Then I was like, I'm definitely going to government. I resonated with being first generation American born to Nigerian immigrants,
Right.
resonated with his story of being of East African heritage, but born in the United States. And the whole idea of, at that time, there was also this fervor generated by people I was hanging out with, period, that it's our time, African diaspora, we're about to go back and do things. And so that was that was the aura I was steeped in, the constant conversations with classmates about, at that time, not knowing I was going to go in that direction academically, how we could use entrepreneurial principles and an innovative mindset to unlock the promise of our continent that we love so much, but live thousands of miles away from. So for 5 years, I was a professor at the University of Cape Town, as life would have it. I kind of went full circle,
Right.
Having this love for the continent. But after the PhD, thinking, okay, I'm just going to, either work in Obama's administration,
Right.
or I'm going to find a development studies department here in the U.S. in an American university and, teach from this soil. And then the position was, I was looking for a gig.
Yeah.
And then came across University of Cape Town's Graduate School of Business, who were recruiting academics who want to make a difference. And I was like, get out of here.
Well, I mean, again, if you're talking about the largest landmass and all of these people and all of these different cultures, that you're going to spur different ways of looking at problems that exist.
Oh,
right?
and it's phenomenal.
And that's where the money's at. I mean, I hate to be crass about the cultural part of the conversation, but from an entrepreneurial perspective, I like when people are going to bring a completely different spin on something.
Yes. And a very nuanced one. And that's what we were, nuanced in terms of being, a group of people, oftentimes members of communities that aren't considered to be the source
Right.
of groundbreaking innovators, but they bring such a detailed understanding of their context, of the way people live, of what makes them feel pain, what makes them feel joy, how they spend their money, how quickly, they come with such detailed, nuanced understanding of that the way they're able to inform innovation lends to an innovative design that's so directly responsive
Right.
to oftentimes an overlooked market that it totally, completely, and surprisingly to, say, mainstream commercial arenas takes off very powerfully.
Am I right? I'm sorry.
And that's what we're seeing more and more during my time as a faculty member there.
Am I wrong, though, thinking part of this is that people find it difficult to blaze the trail to Africa, right? So getting to China with your products, now there's an established playbook for that, right? It's a huge market. A lot of people want those consumers to use their product, whether it's a soft drink or a vehicle or whatever. But the first person to go to China, there wasn't a path, there wasn't a trail blazed. Is it? I'm very bullish on the idea of Africa as a market, if you haven't figured that out yet. So as long as I've got you here, I'm asking the questions.
Ask the
I would
questions.
love to
This is
see a
very cool.
startup from here start to blaze this trail. I think there's a ton of
A startup from the
potential
United States.
From the United States. And I know of a few that have gone there for the particular purpose to solve African problems with American tech. Right, I know of some companies that have done it, but I don't think
But you
it's
also have-
nearly what it could be.
Maybe not nearly what it could be, but I do think it's growing. So I think you do see, you are seeing multilateral organizations and diasporic related organizations that are creating platforms that encourage people of African descent or people who are from the continent who are studying here or who are schooling here for some time to create a venture and then go back.
Right.
And so like the African Diaspora Marketplace, and I need to check to see what's the latest on that. That was co-sponsored by, I think by one of our big ones, either USAID or the World Bank. Like at one point when I was in graduate school, that's what was taking off. And I was like, I want to be there. And so I think you're seeing that conversation more and more, whether or not we are as publicly showcasing it as we should, or whether or not the news of it is rippling through, enough airwaves, so now it's mainstream information.
Okay, but I swear, last Scott is an Africa nerd question. Okay, and that is, am I wrong in thinking that the Chinese are taking advantage of this market? This is what I'm hearing.
Of the African continent?
Correct. That they are coming there and they're actually not exploiting it as consumers, like they're just bringing their products to market. They're actually putting in infrastructure and investment and becoming a part of a larger community there. Am I wrong? Right?
You are not completely wrong at all.
Okay.
So that has been
That is, by the way, the faintest praise I've ever received. You are not completely wrong at all.
You're not completely wrong at all.
That's great.
That has been an ongoing and very intense discussion in the African continent right now. What should be the nature of these commercial and diplomatic ties with China? And the camp tends to be controversial. On one side, you have people saying, hey, they are a business-driven nation. There are individuals and companies that are coming in. They are recognizing opportunity. They are establishing, as you said, infrastructure, technology, affordable products.
And they're truly invested in it. They're not just shipping it over. They're coming with it.
Which is the one camp. The other camp says that these companies are coming, yes, they see a viable market and they see affordable labor. However, when it comes to wanting to train people or technology transfer that further equips, say, African nationals to move up the corporate ladder, these critics say you don't see that. And hence then there is a softer accusation as to whether or not the interest of such foreign direct investment is to actually drive and develop countries. And so you have this controversy from both sides, and it makes the policy surrounding it very, very, very interesting. Because, I mean, in some countries where there were no paved roads before, who's going to say, we don't want your roads?
Yeah.
At the same time.
Those are not convenient at all.
Right.
Roads. That's for other people. Yeah.
Yet at the same time, sure, you bring roads, but you don't hire locals to build it. That might be a problem. Or you don't hire our local engineers to work with your engineers to design it. That may be criticism. So you see those criticisms on both sides. I think that the relationship between Africa and the African continent and China is here to stay.
Yes.
I think that what it will warrant is savviness, probably from business leaders within the African continent, African heads of state, a mindfulness of wanting to establish those type of bilateral connections that do benefit their people in very sincere and authentic ways. I think that's what's going to need to happen more.
While we've been sitting here talking about this, I was like, I thought this was going to be like a couple minutes. But you realize First of all, I am a nerd for this.
That's cool.
And you also then realize that there's a lot to be discussed in terms of what else is out there.
Yes.
Right?
There's a lot.
I know for a fact when students come to you at Robert Morris and they start talking entrepreneurship, they really want to be struck by that lightning.
Mm.
But sometimes you get that feeling like it's all been done.
Mm.
Yeah? You're like, I don't know what my big thing's going to be, or I don't know what exciting project I'm going to have.
Mm.
So you and I probably just spent, let's say 10, 15 minutes. By the time it's edited, I'm not sure what it'll come down to be.
Right.
But I mean, I'm sitting here at the same time trying to hit the gas and the brakes.
Right.
Right. I'm enjoying
I will follow you.
what it means.
Mm.
Because what it means is, again, there's so much more runway.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other side, I'm sitting here going like, but this isn't really what we came here to talk about, right?
Which is fine.
It is fine. It's actually super cool that there's so many different things out there that are stones to turn over and see what's underneath them.
Absolutely.
But when we're talking about the Massey Center, when we're talking about Robert Morris, and we're talking about how what used to be just a California thing for the most part, this startup culture as like capital S startup culture, now it's kind of made its way to some of the other parts of the country. And I'm curious, when they come to you, do they come to you and say, and I'm saying students, their parents, do they know that they've been bitten by the bug, or does it feel like a good investment, or how do they get started?
In terms of students being involved in entrepreneurship.
Coming to it, right.
Coming to the entrepreneurial.
You make the realization that you want to go to the Massey Center.
Yes.
I would say slowly.
Yes.
And I'm curious what that path looks
Over
like,
time.
because you're talking 18-year-olds, 20-year-olds for your traditional students.
Yeah.
Who knows what entrepreneurship is when you're that age?
Right. Okay. No, that's a great question. Who knows what it is at that age, and especially where RMU has positioned itself as a professional learning institute. So across our 5 schools, we do an amazing job of equipping young people to be exceptionally effective in the workplace. You know, an RMU student will be your ideal nurse. They will be your ideal engineer. Like, they will be your ideal manager. You know, we
You're
try to
flirting
give them,
too close to doing your pitch right now.
I know.
I'm gonna make you do it if you keep flirting with
but
it.
I have to give RMU love.
All right,
That's
come
where
on.
I am.
Give me your RMU
So-
pitch. Give it to me.
Oh, I don't know. Oh, wait, was I ready?
Doesn't matter. I told you, you tripped the wire.
And so the RMU student will be that ideal professional. You know, they come with all the technical skills and expertise and training. They also come with a large emphasis of ethical leadership. And so we pride ourselves in that. So when it comes to figuring out what our stamp is on the whole entrepreneurship arena, we realize that there's 2 things we think we could contribute to this entrepreneurship wave that's taken over the region, I believe. One is that as our students are already positioned to be exceptional professionals, we at the Massey Center want to equip them to also be very innovative and forward-thinking professionals. And so our idea is kind of born out of the ideas of entrepreneurship, is that we would be able to establish excellence in workplace innovation, that a student that goes and works in a major corporation or a school or a hospital would also come with the skill sets and the boldness of identifying problems, being able to work and mobilize a team, being able to use an interdisciplinary thinking to source and integrate information from different corners by which to come up with novel solutions that enhances the space that they're working in and enhances the output of the organization.
So you're actually, and you use the word entrepreneurship there, and I just want to make sure that people are clarified, on that.
Absolutely.
You're bringing that same sort of can-do, creative approach.
Absolutely.
But not everyone wants to start something in their garage.
Right. So for the stream of people who do not, we provide and encourage this path. For the men and the women who do, who they are in their junior year and after 2 years, like you said, because come to it very slowly.
Yeah.
Where they realize after, say, being in an entrepreneurship and innovation class and being, as I have in my class, I asked them to produce a dream paper. And I'm like, if resources weren't an issue, and based upon your passion, your idea, the things that excite you, whether they be something that you've worked on formally and have gotten a salary for, or whether it be like a side gig or a hobby, if you were to articulate an opportunity and then an innovative approach to it and create a business model around it, like what would that entrepreneurial idea be? Fully yours, run with it. And that's where I start to see the light come on. They're like, wait, you want to know what I would do? Or like, you want me to research? I think so, because I believe, and I tell this to my students, I think entrepreneurship is invoked. I think the entrepreneurial spirit, the spirit of it, is not something that belongs to an elite group of people that were born with a golden set of attributes, and they're the only ones that could do it. So some of my students have come up with such interesting ideas around fishing, around gaming. You
had me in, a couple months ago, and I saw an idea about construction that was tremendous.
And so...
Hi, Malik.
Hi, Malik.
You got to make sure he listens now.
You're right. I will definitely email him. So now I realize, the unction that I get as both, a scholar and educator, someone who will forever be a cheerleader for my students, is that, okay, Eliada, perhaps if you build it, they will come.
Right.
If you can create the platform of enablement where any student, or at this point, even alumni or community member who is like, okay, I'm starting this entrepreneurial journey, I'm not sure where to go to from here. Yeah. At any point in that journey, would be able to walk into the Massey Center, and there would be some sort of resource or assistance or community for you to walk into that can now help to mature that which has always been inside of you, but now you've decided to courageously embark upon it.
You're treating it like the library. Yeah, there's a resource available to you.
Yes, but
it's the
resources.
Entrepreneurial.
Yeah, so not resources that are still and stoic, resources that are dynamic. So resources in terms of, yes, material that you can read or listen to and digest, but also resources such as professors like myself and several of my other colleagues who will listen and critique and refine with you.
Well, I'm fascinated by the idea that it's waiting for you, though. When you start that entrepreneurial journey, was your passage there, right? You're like, well, at some point you're going to have a conversation that leads to, maybe I should be in business.
Right.
And then you have your doors open to that.
Yes.
And you're waiting for that to happen. Somewhere that is the coolest thing.
I am.
As a resource. So I didn't mean the library as if like it's static. I meant in terms of the fact that the university is investing in this.
Yes.
And when you need it, it's there.
Yes. Absolutely.
That's cool.
Because it is really driven by a deep, resounding belief, and that everyone has this. Mm-hmm. Whether or not you realize it or not, that's one thing. And whether or not once you realize it, you use it, that's another thing. But I do believe that as human beings, we have the capabilities to create. We have the capabilities to solve. We have the capability to hybridize information. And so with that being the case, I had a colleague come to me and he was like, I'm not an entrepreneur. I said, but you solve problems, right? He's like, yeah. I said, you come up with ways by which to mobilize resources to approach that issue, correct? Yeah, you work with teams and sometimes create teams by which to create some sort of, cross-cutting knowledge base to then synergize ideas. And I said, those are entrepreneurial capabilities.
He's afraid that you're cheapening the word to reach him.
And I am totally about that. I am totally about taking this word out of the social enclave that I think we've put it in. I think that society has now created this space where only certain people become entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs look
chosen
only
few.
A certain way. It's the chosen few. They come from a certain path. And I think that I don't think it has been fruitful with regards to giving people the sense of confidence to explore the capabilities that they may not have even known that they had.
That person's afraid that you are lowering the standards of the word. And what you're trying to say is that their impression of the word is unnecessarily restrictive. Is that a fair assessment?
Ooh, this is getting good. Let me sit up a bit.
That's it. You can stand as long as you get to that microphone there.
Is it unnecessarily restrictive? Yes. I've seen it used in a restrictive way
so
to
now we just got to
dichotomize people. And as a result, individuals, men, women from different walks of life and what have you. I taught in a classroom like this in Cape Town, South Africa, where when I would start my class on entrepreneurship, you would see my students, that particular class, predominantly Black, South African, young people, would kind of fall back. And I would say, how many of us see ourselves as entrepreneurs in here? No one would raise their hands. And I was like, well, why not? Not to push it on anyone. If it's not your path, it's not your path. But why not? And they're like, oh, those are for those people. What people? Oh, the Steve Jobs and the Jay-Z's, like the big guys, those guys that have money. I was like, no.
Devil's advocate, ready? Go. It's a marketing term.
Entrepreneurship is a marketing term?
It certainly is.
Yeah, I think so. I think
what you described
it expresses a particular mindset, a particular almost rules of engagement in terms of how people interact and what people value in terms of newness or in terms of novelty and breaking boundaries of thinking and acting. And I think that's good.
What you described was more of an entrepreneurial footing, right? An entrepreneurial mindset.
Yes, very much.
And I totally agree with this. We are trying to imbue people with this can-do creative spirit that the world is changing, the rules are changing, and there are so many infinite flavors of remix that are possible that we need them to be awake.
Yeah.
We need them to be awake at work. We need them to be awake in how they pay their bills. What's their career going to be? So on that level, I'm with you. On the other hand, I understand where they're coming from because some people don't want to be called something until they have reached some level of accomplishment, right? And they're like, I'm not giving that to myself until I've earned it, right? That's my cake at the end of my day. Right? Like, I don't want to cheat. and I think whenever I used to start a consulting engagement, I would start off with the idea that we need to be working from a common dictionary. I would always say that, like, we need to have a common dictionary before I start talking to you. Because if I say prospect and you say lead, we're not really using the same words. And you might think a lead is something totally different and a prospect for me.
Right.
If an entrepreneur is a person who has the skills to make something happen, they're a MacGyver. It does change the conversation that you were talking about with your colleague that said, I'm not an entrepreneur. Just an observation on my part, and I'm wrong about stuff all the time.
Right. No, I think it's very perceptive. I think that ultimately, whether one is or is not an entrepreneur, as in how you personally identify with regards to this particular process. And I think that's a discussion to have. But I think whether or not you are entrepreneurial, which is a descriptor, it's a qualifier of how you carry yourself, of your worldview, of how you enact opportunity. I think that is something that is to be encouraged in more people. And I think many people have it and don't know that they do, because I think up until an extent, those who are entrepreneurs create businesses.
We had John Cipher come in a few weeks ago. He's a business consultant and say that there are intuitive players and there are procedural players, right? And I think what you're saying is that people need to promote themselves into being intuitive players. No one else is going to give it to them. You have to decide you're an intuitive player as opposed to a procedural player.
As in one who follows
one who is given a regimented thing to do, versus someone who has to go out there and sort of play jazz.
Right. Okay, I see what you mean, and I think Yes. And I think, to give people credit, I think people are doing it more often than they give themselves credit.
Right.
We are, I think, as humanity, especially depend upon, whatever conditions you were born or raised in, have to be resourceful and pretty industrial with whatever resources that you have. If there's opportunities that you're going for and you feel as if you are knowledge-wise under equipped, it is, to me, it's entrepreneurial when you find creative ways by which to access knowledge, by which to enhance your way of thinking and doing, and then you go forth courageously and enact that. I think that the essence of it is there, and that's what I want to deconstruct more with the broader entrepreneurial community of Pittsburgh. Because if we're truly speaking inclusion, then I think that deconstruction is necessary so that we could recognize more people who are doing it and may not have known didn't see themselves as part of that circle or part of that community, or to encourage people to realize that, hey, you can do it, and in tough times when you're trying to identify a solution to your own problem, to see the problem as an opportunity that you realize other people also struggle with, which now becomes your market, your approach to your problem, which becomes the approach to other people's problem.
This is not a one-off solution that you developed.
Exactly.
But it's
is your
repeatable
innovation, and that can be now embedded in a business model and you get paid for it.
I'm with it. I like it.
Yeah, we got a lot of work to do, but I'm seeing the
You're really passionate about this, and I like it.
Thank you.
No, that's not something that you can accuse somebody of if it's not true, right? You're animated. You're definitely, you've got your fight up. Mm-hmm. So I got to ask you the question.
Sure.
You're the director over there at the Massey Center.
Yeah. So
what are your fights day in, day out?
What are the fights? Oh, wow. That's an interesting question. Let me reflect a bit. I think that I have been very lucky because at the time that I walked in, there was a lot of newness in RMU, period. So we have a new President Chris Howard. We have a new dean of the business school,
right?
Dean Michelle Patrick, and they are lit. They are about this entrepreneurial life. And in that regard, I was super lucky. I've, heard of horror stories where you have the champion faculty member that's trying to push this and then they kind of get squashed from the top. And that is not what I'm experiencing. So I am really, really grateful for that. I think it's just learning the way of the land. I am as new to Massey Center, to RMU, as I am to the Massey Center.
You've been there?
This will, by the end of April, will be a school year.
Yeah, your first complete year. That's
yes.
what I thought, but I didn't want to speak for you.
Why, thank you. But you are correct.
I'm wrong about stuff all the time. You got to be careful.
No, but you ask good questions. And so just trying to learn and build at the same time warrants what you were suggesting before, the brakes and the accelerator being pushed
at the same
simultaneously.
Yeah.
Especially when I get excited and then my colleagues are really supportive. So they're like, okay, we get it. But then of course I still got to figure out certain systems. I still have to figure out who to talk to for what. And so those will probably be those are the things that wear me out at the end of the day. It's like, man, it took forever figuring out how to get the word out. Like, man, and I realized, I was telling my husband, I think it's just like first year learning curves. I feel like once getting through this year, perhaps it'll be easier.
When parents talk to, whether it be the admissions folks or maybe the faculty, how do they respond? I know there's some conservatism. No one wants their kid to go out on the limb
right.
and fail.
And that's a great question. And it's an answer that we're learning slowly. And so
that is a very intriguing answer.
It is. We're learning it very slowly because the Massey Center is still very, very new. And so now incorporating it into the narrative of RMU is in its very early stages.
Right.
So for the first time, I joined my colleague about 2 Saturdays ago to speak to our parents of incoming freshmen who have been admitted, but they have not yet accepted the offer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good to know.
Yes. And so my colleague invited me because he was just beautifully passionate about how students could get this information about the Massey Center earlier rather than in their junior and senior year. So I said, sure, I'll join you on a Saturday. So I shared information about the Massey Center, and I got the look of curiosity. That's what I got. I got the look of, okay, but there is still, of course, the expectation of a job, that they'll get a job when they finish.
Right.
There's still the expectation of making sure that they graduate. And so I think that trying to link the conversation of being entrepreneurial, being innovative towards those ends is part of the narrative that we kind of have to
You know what I smell?
work out.
I smell fear that they're going to do what I did, which is they're going to come up with an idea and they're going to turn their back on their academics. That makes sense, actually.
So that is like a whole other that's a whole other thing that I have not even I realized was would be an interesting challenge. Recently I went to a conference in Philadelphia. They call it the USASB conference. USA SBE stands for United States Association of Small Business and Entrepreneurship. So I went there to present a paper, but then it also tends to be attended a lot by faculty members who are involved or head up entrepreneurial centers at universities. And the conversation came up in Philadelphia about the identity of the university and what is our role when it comes to nurturing this entrepreneurial fervor, right? Because you kind of have a little bit of contradictory goals there, right? So with entrepreneurship, the emphasis is take action. You know, you feel the intrigue, you've done your homework, take planned act, you know, like think it through,
act on it,
but act on it ultimately. You know that. Whereas, and so therein lies in the possibility that a very, you know, well-equipped, confident junior, senior, sophomore would say, you know what, I got this. I'm out. I don't need school anymore. So there's that one challenge with entrepreneurial, with the outcomes of entrepreneurship, or sometimes the implications of the process of it, with the expectations of the university, which is deep learning, academic rigor, the working through a rather bureaucratic planned structure.
Can I say something horrible?
What?
Technology transfer. You know, that's one of the other things that gets figured in here, right? The goals of the university sometimes also include some of those sweet grants, right? The ability to commercialize some of the technology that's developed on campus.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yes, if your university has that policy. Right. So RMU, I think we're pretty early in that arena. I know universities like Pitt have stronger policies around that, although very recently I learned that policy was changed for undergrad. So I've
read some bad stories about how this can play out.
Yeah, so stuff that,
It's like NCAA athletes, right? Well, you should just be glad that you got an education. That sort of thing.
Shame, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can't vouch for the veracity of the account, but it at least feels as though it could be true that the other side of the ball is the university could end up too much a part of the final fruit.
Yeah. And thankfully, I think I could say RMU is not there yet, largely because, or we haven't encountered that, a point such as that where we would have to make a decision.
Nobody's been pounding their fist on the table about that particular issue.
I don't think so. I don't think so. So in that way, therein lies the joy of this being so emergent.
Yes.
Because that could still be crafted, and because we are really, and I know all universities say this, but from my experience at RMU, we really are a student-first university. Mm-hmm. My hunch is that policies around that, what students produce, would be crafted to favor the student. That's my hunch.
Right.
But we'll definitely see as that unfolds.
It's wait and see.
Right.
But back to your comment about the discussion at USASB.
Yes. So the
university identity here definitely has a lot to do with this.
Yes, it does.
If somebody wants to reach out to you or to the Massey Center, how would they do that?
Oh, Wonderful. Well, you could reach us via email. We are MCEI, Massey Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation at rmu.edu.
Very good.
Or we're on Twitter at the Massey Center, or we also have a Facebook page. It needs to be populated a bit, but we also have a Facebook page.
Well, there we have it.
And then if not, you could contact me. I'm Dr. Eliada Griffin-El. I'm happy to talk to anybody and everybody. Griffin-El at rmu.edu.
And I saw you're actually very easily reachable through the university's website. So
yes.
That's fantastic.
Yes.
I would love at some point to have you back in. I want to talk about all of these adventures overseas and across borders, because I didn't expect expect how quickly that was going to expand, right? And I love it.
That would be fantastic. I would love to.
I hope you will. In the meantime, thank you for coming in.
Thanks so much, Scott. This was fun.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, that does it for Eliada Griffin-El and Robert Morris University and all the other different conversations that we got into this week. I guarantee something in there is going to be useful to you at some point, but I'd like to know what it was. Just a quick reminder, let us know. Social channels are open. Can't wait to hear from you. In the meantime, we'll be preparing next week's episode, which is about 7 days away. I'll catch you then.
The Pitchwerks Podcast comes to you from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, a production of the Epicast Network and MacTaggart, LLC. Engineering and production by Buzzy Torek and Nick Miller. For more information, show feedback, and ad sales, visit pitchwerks.com. pitchwerks.com. On social media, find and follow the show on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram using that same brand name, pitchwerks.